जैन आगमाज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्.
Monkey and Sugari. Sugari's tailor bird is known for its very well woven and an artistic nest. It protects from wind and rain. On one rainy day, a Sugari was sitting in its nest, and it was raining heavily and it was thundering with frequent flashes of lightning. At such time, a monkey, troubled by the cold wind and rain, took shelter under the tree. The Sugari sarcastically asked, "You are so clever, then why didn't you build a nest to live in on the rainy day?" The monkey got angry and told the Sugari to shut up. He kept on shivering. Sugari could not resist teasing him. She said, "Why did you waste the summer time in laziness?" On hearing this, the monkey was enraged and verbally abused the Sugari. The rain and thunder increased, and the Sugari once again opened its mouth. The monkey was so mad now that he said, "Keep quiet, you bad mouth. If you keep murmuring, I will make you homeless. Don't pretend to be a pundit." The Sugari kept quiet, but the cold monkey started to shiver again due to the bitter frost, and the Sugari once again spoke the words of wisdom. At last the monkey could not control its anger any more. He said, "Although I have no ability to make a house, I do possess the ability to break one." Saying so, he climbed up the tree and destroyed the Sugari's nest, making the poor Sugari also homeless. Now both of them suffered from cold, wind and rain. Such occasions are very common. We should not point out the faults of others. We should remain indifferent to them. Everyone is responsible for what he or she does. We should try to learn from other people's good and bad experiences. We should improve ourselves and get rid of our faults first. This was one of my many messages of Lord Mahavira.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते.
जैन आगमाज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्.
Muni Chandra Rudracharya. In the evening time, some youths who had set out for fun and frolic arrived at the Upasharya, a place for Jain monks and nuns to stay, of Muni Chandra Rudracharya. Old and short-tempered Sri Chandra Rudracharya was staying at the Upashraya. These youths, out of mischief, wanted to play some joke on this elderly saint. One of the mischievous youths was to be married soon. Pointing at this young boy, the other youth said in a jocular tone to the monk, "O monk, save this boy. The poor fellow is compelled to marry, though he has the least desire to get married. You are merciful. If you be kind enough to him and grant him initiation, it shall end all his miseries, and it shall be a great obligation of yours." Initially, the elderly monk ignored the joke, but his silence provoked the youth further. They again requested the monk to redeem the youth from the worldly ties. True to his name, Sri Chandra Rudracharya was known for his extremely angry temperament. As a result of excessive joking, the old monk lost his temper and addressed the about to be married youth. "So you want to have initiation? Okay, I shall grant you that. Only then would you realize what it is to live as an initiated." The youth was still in a jocular mood. He said, "Yes, please grant me initiation. At any cost, I want to leave the worldly way of life and accept the path of penance." Sri Chandra Rudracharya's temper burst out. He caught hold of the youth and seizing his head, he soon began to pluck his hair. On seeing this, the other youths ran away, but that youth did not budge an inch. He said to Sri Chandra Rudracharya, "Muniraj, soon my relatives would arrive here. It would be better if we start on a journey before they all arrive." Due to his old age, Chandra Rudracharya had already entrusted all the responsibilities of the Gachacha, a chapter of monks, to a disciple. He had confined himself to self-attainment. How could such a Muni undertake a journey? The youth carried the old monk on his shoulder and started the journey. It was a very difficult and uneven path strewn with thorns all the way. Whenever the disciple's foot would falter, giving the old monk a jerk, the old Guru's temper would soon burst out. The disciple's feet were bruised with blisters and stained with blood. The Guru, riding on his shoulder, scolded him constantly. Meanwhile, the disciples' feet faltered as a result of a deep pit on their way, and the Guru too lost his balance. That was enough. It was the undoing of the disciple. As the volcano of Guru's anger erupted, he gave a heavy blow with his thick stick on the disciple's head. The disciple was in extremely difficult and pitiable condition, yet he thought it was his fault that the Guru had to undergo all such hardships and harassment. Consequent upon his deep repentance, disciple's thinking was purified, and soon he attained pure and absolute knowledge. The Guru said, "Previously you did not walk properly, but now you walk so smoothly and steadily. How is that? How do you find your way in such thick darkness?" The disciple said, "That is the power of knowledge, Kevala Gyan." As soon as he heard these utterances, the Guru jumped off the disciple's shoulder. He apologized to the disciple, who had now attained pure knowledge. Full of repentance as he was by now, the Guru too attained pure knowledge.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Lord Parshvanath. About 3000 years ago, King Ashwasen was ruling over the kingdom of Varanasi, which is also known as Banaras, situated on the bank of holy river Ganga. They had a son named Parshvakumar. Parshvakumar later became the 23rd Tirthankar, Parshvanath of present age. At that time there was a mendicant named Kamath. He had lost his parents in childhood and was raised as an orphan. Being disgusted of his miserable life, he had become a monk and was undergoing severe penance. He came to Varanasi to perform a Panchagni penance. Many people were impressed by his penance and therefore worshipped Kamath. When young Prince Parshvakumar came to know this, he realized the violence of living beings involved in a fire. He came there and tried to dissuade Kamath from the sacrificial fire. Kamath did not agree that the life of any being was at stake because of his ritual. By his extrasensory perception, Parshvakumar could see that there was a snake in the wood that was put in the sacrificial fire. He asked his men to take out that wood and to shear it carefully. To the surprise of the onlookers, a half-burnt snake came out of the burning piece of wood. The snake was burned so badly that he died. Pashakumar recited the Navakara mantra for the benefit of the dying snake, who was reborn as Dharmanendra, the lord of Ashur-Kumars. Kamath became very annoyed by this interference, but was unable to do anything at that time. He started observing a more severe penance, and at the end of his life he was reborn as Meghamali, the lord of rain. Observing the miseries that living beings had to experience, Pashakumar developed a high degree of detachment. At the age of 30, he renounced all his possessions and family and became a monk. Later on, he was known as Parshvanath. He spent most of his time meditating in search of ultimate bliss for life and for all. Once, while he was in meditation, Meghamali saw him. He recalled how Parshvanath had interfered in his penance in an earlier life. He decided to take revenge. By his supernatural power, he brought forth all kinds of fierce and harmful animals like elephants, lions, leopards, snakes. As Lord Parshvanath stayed in meditation, unperturbed, Meghamali brought forth heavy rains. The rainwater touched the feet of Parshvanath and started accumulating. It came up to his knees and then to his waist, and in no time it came up to his neck. Dharendra noticed that Parshvanath, his benefactor, was going to drown in rising flood water. He immediately came there and placed a quick growing lotus below the feet of the Lord so that he could stay above water. Then he spread his fangs all across the head and the sides of the Lord in order to protect him from pouring rain. Dharendra then severely reproached Meghamali for his wretched act and asked him to stop the rain. All efforts of Meghamali to harass the Lord were thus in vain. He was disappointed and realized that he was unnecessarily creating trouble for the graceful, merciful Lord. He withdrew all his supernatural power and fell at the feet of the Lord with a sense of deep remorse. He sincerely begged the Lord to forgive him for his evil acts. Key message: Parshvakumar demonstrated a very keen sense of non-violence and detachment from all things and people. These are the qualities which are essential for attaining self-realization. He showed us that one should be detached and impartial regardless of whether a person is our well-wisher or ill-wisher. We may not always know the reason why a person behaves in a strange way towards us. It may very well be because of karma from a past life.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Punya Shravak. Punya Shravak and his wife were poor villagers by their own choice. They lived in a small shack made of mud and grass. Punya had a vow not to earn more than 12 dhokas, that is 1/12th rupee, every day. He did that by spinning cotton yarn in the house and selling it. They also had another vow to offer food to a sadharmik. As they could not afford this, he would fast one day and his wife would fast on the next day. Even during such difficult situations, they always offered their hospitality to fellow beings. In this way, the couple did sadharmik bhakti, helping deserving people every day. Punya Shravak was known for his practice of samyaka. Once during Samyaka, he could not concentrate on meditation. He started thinking to himself that what had he done that was disturbing his meditation. He could not think of anything that would disturb his meditation. Therefore, he asked his wife, "What have we done differently that I cannot concentrate today?" At first, his wife could not think of anything either. But as she kept on thinking, she remembered that today, while coming back from market, she had picked up dry cow manure and used that as fuel to cook. She told Punya about this. He told her that she should not have done that even though it did not belong to anyone. We should only use things which are bought from our daily earnings. Punya could do true Samayaka because he lived a life of such high morals. Even Lord Mahavira praised his Samayaka. Once when King Shranik asked Lord Mahavira how he can destroy his bad karmas to avoid being born in hell in his next life, Lord Mahavira said, "If you can buy Punya Shravak Samayika, then it may be possible." King Shranik went to Punya Shravak and asked him if he could buy his Samayika. He said, "I do Samayika not to sell, but to uplift my own soul. Religious rituals cannot be purchased. One has to do for himself." King Shranik left in disappointment, but with admiration for Punya's real faith in religion. The key message: this shows that one can live a content life even with limited earnings. We should not take anything which is not given to us. We should not accumulate more money than necessary because it will create more problems. Vows or rituals are done for spiritual uplift and not for monetary gain. In order to gain benefit from Samyika and other forms of meditation and penance, it should be motivated by one's inner self and not by any motives that conflict with Jain principles.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Punyasar. Once in the city of Gopalak, there lived a pious couple, Purandhar and his wife Punyashri. They had no children, so Purandhar worshipped their goddess to have a child. The goddess was pleased with his worship and blessed them. "You will have a son, but you will have to wait for a while." A few years later, a son was born to them. They were very happy and they celebrated this occasion. They named the child Punyasar. He was a very handsome boy. At his school, he met a beautiful girl named Ratnasundari, the daughter of a merchant named Ratnasar. Punyasar and Ratnasundari used to have a lot of arguments between them. One day the argument got very hot. Punyasar said, "You will be nothing but a slave to your husband." Ratnasundari was offended and replied by saying, "My husband will be a civilized man. I would not marry a worthless person like you." Punyasar could not tolerate this comment. He got agitated and said, "I will show you by marrying you." Ratnasundari said, "No way, no one can win someone else's heart by force." They both left still angry at each other. When Punyasar got home, he told his father that he would like to marry Ratnasundari. His father, not knowing what was going on, assured him that it should not be a problem. Punyasar was happy in his mind. Next day, Punyasar's father went to Ratnasundari's house and suggested to her father for a marriage between Punyasar and Ratnasundari. Ratnasundari's father, was very delighted with this offer because Punyasar's father was a well-respected merchant in the town. He felt honored. Ratnasundari overheard this conversation, saw the expression on her father's face. Just as her father was about to accept the proposal, Ratnasundari opposed, saying, "I will not marry Punyasar," and ran away. Both of them were shocked by this. Ratnasundari's father told Punyasar's father, "Please do not take her word seriously. I will talk to her and let you know." Punyasar's father left with disappointment. When Punyasar's father came home, he asked Punyasar, "What is so great about marrying that girl? She had a loud mouth. I do not think she will be a suitable girl for our family. You should forget about her." Punyasar did not say anything because he was confused about what to do next. Punyasar was determined to marry Ratnasundari, so he worshipped the family goddess. Pleased by his worship, the goddess appeared and told him, "Do not worry, in due time your wish will be fulfilled." Punyasar felt happy. Punyasar grew up to be a fine, accomplished young man, but despite his many fine qualities, he developed the habit of gambling. His father did not like this and warned him, but Punyasar did not listen. His gambling came to the stage where Punyasar started stealing things from home, and soon he stole the king's ornaments which were kept in his father's custody. His father realized this when the king asked for the ornament and he could not find them. He was furious at his son and told him, "Until you get those ornaments back, you shall not come into the house." Punyasar was stunned by this command. He felt sorry and helpless for what he had done. He left the house in sadness. Night came and he did not have any place to go. He came to a banyan tree which had a hollow trunk, so he sat in there to rest. A few minutes later, to his surprise, he saw two angels come towards the tree and sit on it. One of them said, "It is a pretty night. Let's go somewhere." The other angel said, "There is no use of just wandering around unless there is something exciting to see." The first one said, "I have heard that in the city named Bhalipur, a merchant named Dana has 7 daughters and they all will marry one man. It may be interesting to see whom they will marry." So they lifted the whole tree and flew over there. Punyasar was listening to this, and when the tree started flying, he did not know what to do. So he decided that he might as well see who the lucky man would be to marry the 7 beautiful girls. After some time, the angels placed the tree on the ground. They went to the place where the marriage ceremony was going to be. Punyasar also got down and followed them. The angels approached the marriage hall, and so did Punyasar. Some people at the hall saw Punyasar and they approached him saying, "We have been waiting for you to marry 7 pretty girls." Punyasar was very puzzled. They said, "Yes, you are the one who will marry these 7 girls." They exclaimed to him, "Merchant Dana has 7 beautiful girls. Their names are Dharmasundari, Danasundari, Kamasundari, Muktisundari, Bhagyasundari, Saubhagyasundari, and Gunasundari." He was worried about their marriage, so he worshipped God Lambodar, Ganesha, the god of success. 7 days ago, God Lambodara appeared and told him, "Go ahead and make preparations for marriage. 7 days from today, you will find a young man following 2 angels coming towards the marriage hall. He is the suitable person for your daughters. We saw you following 2 angels, so you are the person who will marry these 7 sisters." Punyasar was amazed to see how things were happening. He could not believe this. The people took him to the ceremonial stage, and when he saw the 7 pretty girls, he consented to marry them. Everybody was happy to see this handsome young man too. When the marriage ceremony was over, the whole family, along with Punyasar, went to their house. The girls were also amazed as to what had happened. They did not know whom they would be marrying and what he might be doing. So once they were home, one of them asked, "My lord, how much have you studied?" Punyasar was puzzled as to what to answer. So he said, "Happiness does not come whether you are a great scholar or not." So keeping that in mind, I took the middle path. The girls could not understand his answer. Punyasar was getting restless as he wanted to escape and go back home. He said that he wanted to get fresh air and went outside. Gunasundari escorted him to the door and stood there watching him. While leaving the house, he scribbled something on the wall. She ignored it and sat down with her sisters, waiting for him to return. As soon as Punyasar got outside of the house, he ran towards the tree, still wearing his wedding clothes and precious ornaments. He was relieved when he saw that the tree was still there, and once again he rested in the hollow trunk. A few minutes later, the angels came back and started flying back with the tree. Meanwhile, in Gopalak, when Punyasar's mother did not see her son, she asked her husband if he knew where Punyasar might be. His father was still mad at him, told her that he told Punyasar to leave the house because his behavior was not good for family's reputation. She understood this, but after all she was mother and could not take this. She began crying and requested her husband, "Please, for my sake, go find him and bring him home. I am worried about what might happen to him at night." Punyasar's father could not bear to see her weeping. He went to look for Punyasar. Punyasar's father looked all over the town but could not find him anywhere. He decided to go outside the town to see if Punyasar was around. Just before he got there, the two angels landed the tree outside the town. On his way back home, Punyasar realized how bad his habits were. He decided that he would not gamble anymore. He got down from the tree and started walking home. Soon he ran into his father. When his father saw the ornaments and rich clothes, he thought Punyasar must have stolen them. He was about to say something, but Punyasar said, "Dad, please do not think badly of me this time." He explained about what had happened after he left the house. He also promised his father that he had decided to change and would not gamble anymore. He also promised he would take part in the family business. His father was very happy to hear this. Both of them hugged each other and went home. His mother was happy that her son was all right. Now in Balipur, the girls began to worry when their husband did not come back. They did not even get a chance to ask his name or where he was from. Gunasundari went outside to check if he was there, but she saw no one. She told her sisters, "He has left us. We should trust the words of the goddess. Let us have faith in Namokar mantra and religion. Then everything will be all right." Just then Gunasundari remembered seeing him scribble something on the wall. She told her sisters, "Wait, I will be right back." She went to the wall and saw the couplet, "From Gopalak did I come by divine grace, and after marrying 7 girls, here do I return." Gunasundari told her sisters what was written there. A few days went by and Punyasar still did not return. Gunasundari told her sisters and parents, "I'll go to Gopalak to find and bring him back. I'll be back in 6 months. If I fail, then I will burn myself." She dressed herself as a man named Gunasundar and left for Gopalak. As a good gesture to the king of Gopalak, Gunasundar went to the court house and offered him precious gifts. The king was happy to receive them and welcomed Gunasundar with honor. Gunasundar started a business and it prospered greatly. He was the talk of the town. He met Punyasar on many occasions and they became good friends. Many a time Gunasundar felt as if he knew Punyasar but did not say anything. Meanwhile, the people of the town began praising Gunasundar. They said he was handsome educated, intelligent, and well-mannered. Ratnasundari saw him at one of the town's functions, became attracted to him, and decided to marry him. She asked her father if he would give her a marriage proposal to Gunasundar. Next day, Ratnasundari's father went to Gunasundar's house. Gunasundar welcomed Ratnasundari's father, offered him a place to sit. Then he asked the reason for the visit. Ratnasundar told Gunasundar the purpose of his visit and proposed the marriage of his daughter. Ratnasundari, Gunasundar was in a dilemma. He did not want to accept the proposal, but he was afraid that the people may spread all kinds of rumors about him. Ratnasar was desperate because Ratnasundari was growing up and would not agree to marry any other man. Gunasundar could not say no to the persistence of Ratnasar, so he agreed to marry Ratnasundari. Gunasundar and Ratnasundari were married in a small private ceremony. After the marriage, when Ratnasundari came to her new house, Gunasundar told her, "I have taken a vow that when I get married I would not sleep or stay in the same room with my wife for first 6 months. Ratnasundari did not think much about this because she was happy to be married to him, and she thought 6 months would fly by quickly. So they decided to stay in separate rooms. When Punyasar learned that Ratnasundari, for whom he had left the 7 girls he married Gunasundar, he was furious. He became angry with the goddess who promised him that everything would work out right. How can this be right when Ratnasundari was married to another man? He went to his room and asked the goddess to explain this. The goddess appeared and said, "Calm down, have some patience, and things will work out properly. Gunasundar is your wife." Then she left. Gunasar did not understand anything of this and was more confused. He could not figure out that Gunasundar was no one else but Gunasundari that he married in Balipur. Meanwhile, Gunasundari's 6 months promise to her sisters and parents passed by, and she could not resolve the mystery of her life. So she decided to burn herself. She told Ratnasundari about her decision. Ratnasundari was stunned. Ratnasundari asked Gunasundar, "What happened? Have I done anything wrong? Is there something we can work out?" But Gunasundar did not reply at all. Ratnasundari went to the king for help. Even the king was not only unsuccessful to find out the reason but could not convince Gunasundar to stop. The day was announced and the whole town was sad to see what was going to happen. When the day arrived, the whole town, even the king, was there, where Gunasundar was going to end his life by jumping into the fire. As Gunasundar walked towards the fire, the king screamed, "Can anyone stop this?" Punyasar, because he cared for Gunasundar's friendship, walked towards Gunasundar. Gunasundar stopped walking because he thought maybe Punyasar had recognized his real identity and finally the mystery would be over. Punyasar asked Gunasundar, "Why are you doing this? Is there anything I can do to help?" Gunasundar was waiting for this opportunity. He said, "Yes, you can." He took out the paper he had with him and asked Punyasar if he had written this. Punyasar was amazed to see those 2 lines which he had written at the girl's house whom he married and left. Punyasar said, "Yes, I wrote them." Gunasundar immediately took off her bonnet. Her hairs went flying due to the wind. The people were puzzled to see this, and before they understood the situation, Gunasundar bowed to Punyasar and said, "I am Gunasundari." Now it clicked in Punyasar's mind what the goddess said. "Gunasundar is your wife." Tears started flowing from his eyes, and he hugged Gunasundari in front of everyone. The people, the king, and Ratnasundari did not know what was going on. Punyasar told the crowd in broken words, "Gunasundar is no one but my wife Gunasundari of Bhalipur." whom I married with her 6 sisters about 6 months ago. It was cruel on my part that I left them without telling anything about me. Everybody was relieved. Ratnasundari was puzzled about what to do. The king explained that since she was married to Gunasundar, she would be Punyasar's wife. Ratnasundari was amazed at the fate. She bowed to Punyasar. Punyasar hugged her and asked her forgiveness for the things he had said while they were students. Everybody dispersed and went home. Since there was not any message from Gunasundari for the 6 months period, Gunasundari's sisters came to Gopala in search of their husband too. They came to know the whole story when they arrived in town. They met Punyasar, Gunasundari and Ratnasundari. They all lived happily thereafter.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
जैन आगमा ज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Queen Chelna and King Shranik. This is a story from the time of Bhagwan Mahavir. At that time, King Chetak was the ruler of Vaishali and he had a beautiful daughter named Chelna. Once an artist called Bharat painted a picture of Chelna and showed it to King Shranik, that is Bimbisar of Magad. Charmed by Chelna's beauty, Shranik fell in love with her. One day, Chelna came to the city of Magad where she saw King Shranik and she also fell in love with him. They soon got married. Queen Chelna was a devoted follower of Jainism while Shranik was influenced by the Buddhism. The king was very generous with a big heart but somehow was not happy with his queen's devotion to the Jain monks. He wanted to prove to Chelna that Jain monks were pretenders. He strongly believed that no man could follow the practice of self-restraint and non-violence to that extent, and that the equanimity shown by Jain monks was just superficial. Chelna was greatly disturbed by this. One day King Shranik went on a hunting trip where he saw a Jain monk, Yamadhar, engaged in deep meditation. Shranik let his hunter dogs go after Yamadhar, but the monk remained silent. On seeing the calmness and composure of the monk, the dogs became quiet. King Shranik got angry and thought that the monk had played some trick on them. So he started shooting arrows at the monk, but they kept on missing him. Becoming more upset, he finally put a dead snake around Yamadhar's neck and came back to his palace. The king narrated the whole incident to Chelna. The queen felt very sorrow and took the king back to Yamadhar's meditation spot. Because of the dead snake, ants and other insects were crawling all over the monk's body, but the monk did not even stir. The couple witnessed the limits of human endurance. The queen gently removed all the ants and snakes from the monk's body and cleansed his wounds. She applied sandalwood paste. After some time, Yamadhar opened his eyes and blessed both of them. The monk did not distinguish between the king who had caused him pain and the queen who had alleviated his pain. King Shranik was very impressed and convinced that Jain monks were truly beyond attachment and aversion. Thus King Shranik, along with Queen Chelna, became a devoted member of Order of Bhagwan Mahavir.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
जैन आगमा ज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सवसहूणम्.
Rohineya and Abhay Kumar. In times of Lord Mahavira, there was a burglar named Lohakur. He lived in a remote cave of Vaibhagiri near Rajagruhi. He was very smart in his activity and never left any trace of his burglary. His wife's name was Rohini and they had a son named Rohineya. As Rohineya grew up, he picked up at the art of burglary from his father and eventually became an expert burglar. In smartness, he even surpassed his father. It was almost impossible to recognize him when he was in disguise. If someone persuaded him, he could unturn anyone. He could even jump over walls when necessary. He committed burglary mostly from houses of noblemen and rich people and hid the treasure of his burglaries in the most unexpected and inaccessible places. To the poor he extended help from the wealth that he had so accumulated. Many of them therefore felt grateful and were pleased with him. Therefore, they were not willing to help the government officials in tracking him down. Lohakur was now very old and could see that his life was soon to end. When he was on his deathbed, he called Rohineya by his side and said that he was very happy with the expertise that he had shown in committing burglary, which had been their ancestral profession. In order to stay successful, he however advised his son never to listen to the sermon of Lord Mahavira, because his teachings were not conducive to their profession. Rohineya promised his father to abide by his advice, so Lohur could breathe his last breath with the sense of satisfaction. After he died, Rohineya expected and expanded his burglary to a large scale, so much that it became almost impossible for the well-to-do families to experience safety of their property if they needed to go out. They were constantly afraid that Rohineya would reach their home during their absence and take away jewelry and other valuables from the house. Such people once came to King Shranik and requested him to take some effective action to protect them from Rohineya's burglaries, since police officers had failed to do anything about the matter. The king therefore asked Abhay Kumar to undertake suitable action for getting hold of Rohineya. Once while Rohineya was secretly on his way to Rajagrihi, he had to pass by the side of Lord's assembly. He remembered his father's advice. He therefore put his hands on his ears in order to prevent the voice of Lord from reaching him. Unfortunately, however, a sharp thorn pricked deep into his foot that very instant. He had therefore to take his hands off from the ears in order to take out the thorn. During this time, words of the Lord reached his ears. He heard the following words: "Human life is the best of all lives. It is possible to attain liberation only during human life. Every human being can attain salvation irrespective of caste, creed, or color. By virtuous deeds, one would gain life in heaven, where there are all sorts of material pleasures and happiness. The heavenly beings move above the ground, and their feet do not touch it. Their bodies are shadowless, their eyes remain steady, and their garlands do not wither. That life, however, does not lead to ultimate liberation, which provides eternal bliss. Therefore, heavenly beings too crave for obtaining human life." By that time, Rohineya removed the thorn from his foot, and covering his ears with his hand, again he proceeded towards the city. Since being entrusted with the task of trapping Rohineya, Abhay Kumar had secretly posted trained soldiers in guise at the gates and all important corners of the city. He himself also remained watchful. Next time Rohineya came to the city, a watchwoman saw him Rohinaya was in the guise of a farmer. The watchman sent a message to Abhay Kumar that some unidentified person had entered the city. Abhay Kumar became very alert. As Rohinaya passed by, Abhay Kumar glanced at him from a secret place. He did not fail to recognize the burglar even in disguise and instructed his men to surround him. Smart as Rohinaya was, he quickly recognized the danger. He ran towards the city wall. Unfortunately for him, there were soldiers near the wall to capture him. He was thus easily apprehended and was put in jail. The next day he was appeared in court. As Rohinaya was in disguise, it was hard to identify him as a burglar. Abhay Kumar was of course sure, but how could the accused be punished without proof of his identity? When the king asked him about his identity, Rohinaya replied that he was a farmer named Durga Chandra and belonged to Shaligram village. He had come to Rajagriha for seeing the capital and was returning home when watchmen tried to apprehend him. Rohinaya had made arrangements for that assumed identity with the residents of that village. When the inquiries were therefore made in that village, the people corroborated what Rohinaya had stated in the court. Abhay Kumar had to devise a plan for getting a confession of Rohinaya regarding the burglaries. He came to know that Rohinaya was fond of drinks. He therefore arranged for serving excessive wine to the accused to the extent of making him unconscious. In that state, Rohinaya was neatly cleansed, dressed in extravagantly performed royal garments, and was adorned with valuable jewelry. He was then placed on a luxurious velvet bed on a sandalwood cot on the top floor of a palatial building. As Rohinaya regained his senses, he saw himself in heavenly surroundings. There was breathtaking view all around. Walls, ceiling and floors were crystalline. Beautiful maidens were waving scented air and diamond-studded fans. Slow, sweet music was flowing from the background. Fairy tale damsels were dancing in tune with that music, and apparently divine musicians were getting ready for a musical concert. Rohinaya could not make out where he was. He asked one of the girls where he was and why all of them were serving him so well. The girl replied that he was their Lord in the heaven, that he had attained in all the divine comforts which now belonged to him. He could live like Indra, the king of heaven, and enjoy with the heavenly damsels the way he wanted. Could this be true for a burglar like him? He asked himself. But he then remembered that he was helpful to the poor and needy, and he was sure that God must have been just. Or could this be the plan of Abhay Kumar? He thought again. It was real hard for him to decide what was true. He therefore thought it was best to wait and see. After a while, a luxuriously clad person entered with a golden staff and book in his hand. Is your new lord awake? He asked one of the damsels. The girl replied that their new lord had just woken up and they had been getting ready to celebrate his arrival in the heaven by presenting the divine concert. Let me make sure that all preparations pertaining to his arrival have been completed before you start your concert, and let me also get from him some information that the heavenly realm needs to know. As he was saying this, he came to Rohinaya. Opening his book, he asked Rohinaya to narrate his deeds from his previous life before prior to enjoying the amenities of heaven. Meanwhile, Rohinaya was watching all around. He remembered that he had heard from Lord Mahavira about heavenly beings at when the thorn had pricked his foot. He observed the movements of the so-called heavenly beings in front of him. He noticed that their feet were touching the ground. Their bodies had shadows. and their eyes were blinking like human beings. He immediately made out that the heaven was a fake and it was only a trick of Abhay Kumar to gain evidence of his burglaries. He therefore replied that in the previous life he had given donations for all worthy causes, he had constructed temples, and he had been for pilgrimage to holy places and had rendered service to the deserving entities. That person took note of his statement and asked him to narrate any wrong deeds that he might have indulged in. Rohinaya said that he had scrupulously avoided misdeeds and therefore he was born in heaven. Abhay Kumar's plan backfired and Rohinaya was set free as being the innocent farmer that he pretended to be. Rohinaya was released. However, he constantly thought about what had happened. He realized that what he had accidentally heard from Lord Mahavira had saved his life. Then how could his father be right in the advice that he had given? That Lord must have been a real grateful entity. If those accidentally heard words were so helpful, imagine how helpful his entire teaching could be. He asked himself, did he waste his years avoiding sermons of the Lord? After pondering at length, he decided to go to the Lord and to serve at his feet. He went to the assembly and humbly requested the Lord to accept him as his pupil. He also offered to become a monk if the Lord had considered him fit for renouncement. As the Lord thought him worthy to become his pupil, he sought his permission to make confession to the king before he renounced. He then disclosed his real identity to the king who was present in the assembly and offered to accept any punishment. He also requested Abhay Kumar to order some of his officials to take back all the valuables that he had stored. That way the stolen materials were recovered and handed over to their respective owners. Since Rohinaya had voluntarily confessed and had willingly returned everything that he had taken during burglaries, the king decided to pardon him and permitted him to be the Lord's monk. Rohinaya highly repented for what he had done in his life. He started observing severe austerities in order to erase the karma acquired by his misdeeds. When his body was unable to bear more, he adopted anashan, avoiding the food and staying in meditation with the permission of the Lord, and attained entry into heaven at the end of his life. Key message of this story is theme here focuses on honesty and principle of non-stealing. One should not steal from others even if one takes the stolen items and donates them to a poor people. Wrongdoing is still wrongdoing regardless of how much good you are doing in others' areas. One must repent for it in order to destroy the bad karma that accumulate as a result of it. Second thing we learn from this story is that we can only attain liberation from human form. Even heavenly beings cannot attain liberation without taking a birth as a human being first. So we should all realize how fortunate we all are to have this human birth and make the most of it and wash away as much bad karma as we possibly can.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते.
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्.
Sage Nandisan. Sage Nandisan was a great ascetic and well versed in the scriptures. He took a vow to serve monks with utmost devotion. His devotion of serving the monks was even popular in the heavens. One day his services were openly applauded by Indra in an assembly by angels. One of the angels could not believe this and decided to test Sage Nandisan. The angel gods can assume any form they desire in a moment and can reach anywhere in the wink of an eye. This god arrived at the outskirts of the village where the sage Nandisan was to test his vow of servitude and assumed the forms of two monks. One became a very old and a diseased monk, while the other became a young and healthy monk. It was the day on which the sage Nandisan was to break his fast. After he came from collecting Gochari alms and was about to break the fast, the young monk came to him and said, "Oh, blessed one, there is very old monk suffering from diarrhea, extreme thirst and hunger. He is weak and needs your help." Hearing these words, sage immediately got up and took pure water with him and went to the place where the old monk was. Seeing Nandisan, the old monk at once raged, "Oh, you wretch, I am lying here suffering and you did not even care to find if anyone needs help." Sage Nandisan was not offended by these words. He had developed virtues of tolerance, forgiveness, and compassion. He calmly replied, "Oh, the best of the monks, kindly excuse my oversight. I have brought pure water for you to drink." He helped the old monk drink the water. He cleaned his clothes, his body, and helped him sit up. The old monk once again became irritated. He frowned, saying, "Oh, you fool, don't you see that I am too weak to sit? What are you doing to me?" Sage Nandisan said, "I will support you." Having seated the old monk, he said, "Oh, reverend monk, if you desire, I shall carry you to Upshrai, place where monks stay temporarily, where you will be more comfortable." The monk replied, "Why are you asking me? You may do so as you wish." Sage Nandisan seated the monk on his shoulders and slowly proceeded further. He walked slowly, watching every step carefully. The old monk was determined to test him, so he increased his own weight gradually. With the increase in weight on his shoulders, Sage Nandisan began to tremble and he almost fell. The monk said, "Oh, you wretch, what is wrong with you? Don't you know how to walk? You are shaking my entire body. Is this any way to serve the sick?" His words were very bitter and harsh, but Sage Nandisan was not disturbed at all. He said, "Pardon me, I shall be more careful." Later the old monk passed stool and the odor was unbearable, but the sage was not disturbed at all. He ignored this and continued walking and took care not to offend the monk with any of his faults. On the way he thought about how to cure the monk. He arrived with the monk at the Upashraya. During all this time, the old monk was watching Sage Nandisan and did not see any change in helping nature of Sage Nandisan, even after all of the aggravation. So the old monk turned back into an angel and paid homage at once to the Sage Nandisan, saying, "Blessed are you, O sage, you are the illustrations of a real monk. You are as described by Lord Indra. I am very pleased with you and grant you whatever you choose." Oh God, this human life is very rarely achieved. Nothing is more valuable than human existence. I am content. I crave for nothing. The god bowed his head at the feet of the sage. The god returned to his abode, applauding the merits of the sage.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोस्तुते।
जैन आगमा ज्ञान।
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सपसहूणम्।
Shalibhadra. Once upon a time there lived a poor mother and her son in a small village. One day there was a festival in the village and all the kids, including the poor son, gathered to play. After playing, everyone started to eat kheer, sweet rice pudding and milk, which they brought with them. This poor boy did not have anything with him. He felt bad and ran back to his mother. He asked her if she would make him the kheer, since all the children were eating it. His mother said that she could not make kheer and told him to eat whatever she had cooked. He started crying and insisted on the kheer. His mother did not want to see him cry, so she went to the neighbor's house and borrowed some milk, sugar, and rice to make the kheer for her son. She poured the kheer into a dish and left to get the water from the well. As the boy was about to start eating, he heard the word Dharmalabh, meaning you be blessed of spirituality, usually spoken by a Jain sadhu. He saw a monk at the door for the food. Without any hesitation, the hungry boy invited the monk in and offered him the kheer. While pouring the kheer, all of it slipped into the monk's pot. He was happy that he could offer this to the monk even though nothing was left for him to eat. His good intention brought him good karmas, and in his next life he was born as a famous Shalibhadra. Shalibhadra's mother was Bhadra Stani and his father was Gobhadra Sheth. His father had left the house when the boy was young and became a monk. Shalibhadra was a born multi-millionaire. His life was like being in heaven. It was said that even the heavenly angels were jealous of his lavish lifestyle. He had 32 beautiful wives. His mother never let him out of his palace in a fear that he might become a monk like his father. One day some merchant from Nepal came to sell some very expensive saris. They went to King Shranik's court where the king told them that he could not afford to use his citizens' money for such expensive saris. They were going back with disappointment because they had the high hopes about this city. When Bhadra Stetani came to know about this, he sent for those merchants. The merchants were reluctant to go because if the king could not buy, how any resident could buy such expensive things? But they went there anyway. Bhadra Stetani asked, "What do you have?" They said they had 16 saris. He said, "Only 16? I need 32 saris because I have 32 daughter-in-laws." The merchants thought she was joking and would not buy even one. She said, "What are you waiting for? Take out those saris." They took out those 16 saris. The merchants were surprised that without any second thought, she bought all the 16 saris. They were further dazed to see her tearing such precious saris into two pieces in front of them and giving a piece to each of her daughter-in-laws to wipe their feet. The merchants were stunned but left with joy. The daughter-in-laws used these pieces once and threw them away. One of the servants liked the queen, so she took one piece for the queen. The queen was baffled but happy that such rich people lived in her kingdom. She told this to King Shranik. He also felt very proud of such rich people who uphold the good name of his kingdom. He invited Shalibhadra to his court to honor him. When Bhadra Stetani found out, she went to the king and told him her son was very shy and invited the king to come to their palace to honor Shalibhadra. King Shranik accepted the invitation and went to Shalibhadra's palace. When King Shranik reached there, he realized that his palace was nothing compared to Shalibhadra's palace. Bhadra Stetani offered him a place to sit and asked Shalibhadra to come down to see the king. Shalibhadra did not know anything about king or kingdom and thought that there was some sort of merchandise that his mother wanted to show him. So he said, "I do not want to see that, but go ahead and buy it." His mother said, "This is not the merchandise. He is our king, our master, and you need to come down to greet and honor him."
The word master started ringing in his ears. He wondered, why should I have a master over me? I should be the master of myself. While thinking like this, he came down and paid respects to the king. But he could not stay very long and went back. He kept on thinking that he was not free because there was someone over him. He started to think about his father, who had become a monk, and the real meaning of life. He decided at that moment to become a monk and told his family about the decision. His mother and wives tried to convince him to spend some more time with them and maybe later think about it. But he did not listen. At last he agreed that instead of leaving all 32 wives at once, he will leave one wife at a time, and then he would definitely become a monk. He started to do that the very same day. A few days passed by. One day his sister Subhadra was giving her husband Dana a bath, and suddenly tears rolled down from her eyes and fell on him. He looked up and saw his loving wife crying. He asked her what had happened. She told him that her brother had decided to be a monk and he had been leaving one wife every day. Dana laughed and told Subhadra her brother was a coward. If he wanted to leave his wife, why wait? Subhadra was upset to hear that and told her husband, it is easier said than done. This sparkled an awareness in Dana's mind, and he told her, I am leaving all 8 of you right now, and I am leaving right now to be a monk. Subhadra was taken by a surprise. She told him that he must be joking. But Dana said, it is too late now. I am determined to be a monk. If you all want to join me, you are welcome. Seeing Dana determined, Subhadra and the rest of his 7 wives also decided to become nuns. Now Dana came to his brother-in-law's Shalibhadra's place and challenged him. Hey coward, if you really want to leave the family and become a monk, then what are you waiting for? Join me. Shalibhadra heard and accepted the challenge. He told his wife, sorry, but I am leaving you all today. He went down to join his brother-in-law. His wife joined him too. All of them went to Lord Mahavir and took Diksha. What an incredible ending to such a luxurious life. After observing the penance as monk, he was born as an angel in Swartha Siddha Viman. From there he would be born in Mahavidesha Kshetra and ultimately attain liberation and moksha.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।
Jaina Agama Gyan.
नमो अर्हन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो उवज्जयाणं नमो लोये सवसहूणम्।
Shreyanasa Kumara. Shreyanasa Kumara, the son of King Somaprabha in Hastinapur and the grandson of Rishabha, seemed to be an exceptional young man. Once he had a dream that he watered a grand golden mountain with a jar of nectar. In that same night, a rich man named Subudhi had a dream in which Shreyanasa Kumara made the sun with its thousands of brilliant rays shine ever more brightly. Even King Somaprabha himself dreamt that a great man was being defeated, and he succeeded only with the help of Shreyanasa. The next day, all met and discussed the dreams in the council of the state. Dream readers were called to reveal the meaning of the dreams, but even they could not fully comprehend what such images indicated. Nevertheless, all agreed that Shreyanasa was destined to become something magnificent. Thus everyone returned content to their homes. Shreyanasa Kumara, still pondering over his dream, considered what great deeds would be performed by him.
By chance he looked at the highway and he recognized a lean figure approaching him as Bhagwan Rishabha. Because of his purity of thought, Srinasa had achieved Jatismaran, Gyan, and realized that Rishabha had been performing penance for the last 12 months. Therefore, nobody was offering him food. Rishabha had been offered various types of precious jewels, but no one ever offered him food. In return, Rishabha never asked for food. Upon seeing him who had not eaten anything for the last 1 year, Srinasa rushed to meet the Bhagwan. Srinasa implored Rishabha to come to his palace, sanctify it, and give him the privilege of becoming a worthy donor. Upon arrival at his home, Srinasa Kumara searched for something to offer in alms and found several jars containing the juice of sugar cane, which was traditionally used to end fast. He offered this juice to Rishabha with great pleasure. At that time, Jain Munis did not use pots to eat and drink, but instead used their hands as cups. Thus Rishabha cupped his hands and drank the sweet sugar juice. That was the day of Akshaya Tritiya. Now on that same day each year, many of our Jain followers begin a fast that is observed on alternate days for a full year.
यदक्षरपदभ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देव महावीर नमोऽस्तु ते।